See, the challenge we have in South Africa is that maybe through our evolution, we did away with the volunteer system. Back in the days, actually, the current people that are involved with sport administration, they started as volunteers. All of them started as volunteers.
Hey guys, welcome back to yet another summative episode. Let's call them that. Yeah, let's call these episodes summative episodes of season 1 of the My Story in My Own Words on the African Playbook Network podcast. Thank you very much for joining us for this episode. And if you're listening in, let's jump straight into the thick of things. In this episode, we are going to talk more about the lessons that one can learn if they're trying to work professionally in the sports industry and trying to develop a career outside of playing sports, and more into the administration and the various aspects of the sports industry. As we all know, it's multifaceted. You would have picked up by now, because there's finance within sports, there's finance, there's sponsorship, there's governance, there's a whole different various facets that one can get involved in. And I think if we're to jump straight into the lessons that one can learn, I think there was something that was very important that came out of Mandla's episode. He made mention of the power of networking. And I think that is something which is very important for people in the sports industry, because a lot of us tend to go out looking for work and underestimate the value of networking. It's a very important thing, and just have a listen to this.
In sport, it's also about networks. Sport is a closed industry, and once you step out of it, it's very hard to come back in. So, because it's a small industry, people don't network, and because they don't network, then they end up not getting opportunities.
Yeah, and I think the second point one can also take out is volunteerism. I think listening to all 6 stories, from Bungi's story to all the way through to Shafika's story, is volunteerism is an absolutely amazing way of getting into the industry. Great way to start off. And I think, listening to Shafika as well, she started off as a volunteer at her own school. You listen to Bungi, who spent a number of years working as a volunteer. And finally, when the very first Netball World Cup came around on African soil, she then got an opportunity to be pulled out into the limelight of things. I think volunteerism is a very important thing, and over the years, it's dwindled. I won't lie. A lot of us don't want to volunteer because we want a paycheck. We want to get some sort of incentive. But I think if you're really, really passionate about it and you're wanting to get that first step, start volunteering. Mandla says it. You don't need to go volunteer at a SAFA or at a CSA. Start within your school. Head down to the local school. You know what your school needs, what your local school needs. So head down there, have a look what they need. And that's an absolute great first step of getting involved. From there, things should unravel and work out for themselves. And another piece that I want to add on to that is start developing an entrepreneurial mindset. You know, you can look into the skills and the needs of your community and start thinking about ways that you can build a business around it. Start thinking about how you can make money with the needs. You know, there's needs, there's coaches that are needed at schools. How about you approach them and get parents to pay $5 rand? You know, that's the starting point. Start developing that mindset. It's very important. And yeah, have a listen to this.
The challenge we have in South Africa is that maybe through our evolution, we did away with the volunteer system. Back in the days, actually, the current people that are involved with sport administration, they started as volunteers. All of them started as volunteers. But when we started to say now volunteers must be paid, that is when things went wrong. And now we don't have those graduates, sports management graduates, working in the communities free of charge to gain experience, because they tell themselves that no, they have a degree, therefore they deserve to get a job. And now if they volunteer, they must be paid. And that, doing away with the culture of volunteerism, affected sport in terms of the people that are recruited. And the second thing also, if we look at the curriculum, the sport management curriculum at universities and colleges, you link it with the practical work of sport, there is a misalignment. There is a misalignment. And I have seen it even within my own team. I have colleagues who came, fresh as students, graduated out of UWC, they come, they get a job here, and they will tell you after 3 months that, shit, what I learned in class is not what I'm doing here. It's more complicated than what we learn in class. So we need to also strike a balance in the curriculum to what is done practically and what we study for. And the last thing that we need to do within the sports management curriculum, we need to have some sort of entrepreneurship. Because sports management currently trains you to study so that you can get employment. It doesn't train you so that you can go out there, have your own business. It is only sports science that will allow you to do that. If you study physiotherapy or biokinetics, then you can have your own practice. But sports management, the culture is that study so that you can get employed. And employment in South Africa, we know it's a serious challenge.
Yeah, and I think the third point comes, it's something we've heard. It's something we've seen all over social media. And women's sports is the next big thing that's going to happen. It's about to boom. And I think it's a very important time that if you are looking to get involved in the sports industry, and you are also thinking about the previous point that we spoke about of volunteerism, have a look at starting into women's sport, because I think that's a space where there's room for growth. There's room for people to get involved. There's clubs that still don't have someone who runs their social media pages. Maybe that's something you could start off by doing. So have a look at getting into women's sport, because that is something that's going to blow up within the next coming months and years. So definitely, in my perspective, something that I've deduced, when women's sport is the next biggest thing. So if you are looking of getting involved in sport in general, just do your research about women's sport and let's make it great.
What's your perspective? How do you see South African sport?
My perspective is women's sport. Period. That's my perspective. I think it's time. It's women's time. I think we all know this. I don't think people understand how big the transition or the transformation is going to be. I mean, if I look at the numbers that I'm seeing from some of my own properties, it's like we're talking about viewership increases in the hundreds percent. 100%. We're seeing huge audience development. And as a marketer, that's what excites me, because more fans means more people I can chat to, more people I can engage with. And so it's very critical for us as a sponsorship industry as a whole that we find these new avenues.
Yeah, so the fourth point then speaks to a point of something that you would have also deduced of a lot of the people that we've also interviewed are involved in sports, but not all of them started out as sports management or sports science students. And this point then speaks to sport is for everyone. Working in the sports industry is not limited to only those people with sports related qualifications. It's very important that we debunk that. You don't need to have a sports management degree or sports management qualification or sports science qualification to get involved in sports and in the administration side of sport. I think it's very important to come to also acknowledge the variety and the multifacetedness of the sports industry, and that needs people that have financing backgrounds, because those people can come into the sports industry and be finance specialists within the sports industry. People with experience in public administration and governance will play a huge role in terms of ensuring that a club is managed the correct way. You know, the governance structure of the club, the policies of the club are put in place and are actually adhered to correctly. So I think that is a very important thing that anyone can get involved with, whether you're coming from your retail sub background, whatever background you're coming from, there is space for you in the sports industry. So do your homework, have a look at what your qualification can do and how it can get involved in sports, because there's definitely space for you.
But it was never my plan really to get into sport administration. I think I was doing it naturally, because if someone must go and prepare documents for the club, I would say, okay, if there's no one else, let me do it, because I want us to be organized. And even when I got to university, I didn't study sport management. My first degree was BA, and then honors, I studied labor law. So I never really studied sport, but I was always involved in sport at many levels. And that is what actually made people to notice me. Then even myself, I was surprised when one of my former mentors also, she passed on, Dr. Sharon Bergman. She was the director of sport at University of Port Elizabeth. Well, she said, no man, there's a sporting post, please apply for it. And I was like, but I don't have a sporting qualification. She said, no, you have experience. You don't need qualification, you have experience. And when I got that job, actually, it is what then triggered me to say, okay, now let me get qualifications in sport, because again, our human nature is that if you don't have that piece of paper, you cannot claim to be qualified. So I studied sport management, and I found that actually it was very easy, because I was studying things that I've already done. So it was another lesson for me to say, actually, yes, it's good to have qualification, but don't make a qualification a yardstick. That's why even in my office, you'll never see me making qualifications elsewhere, because I don't believe that you must show your qualification that you can do the job, because you can have a PhD but be a most useless PhD. So I studied sport because I was already in it. So I think what really pushed me was just because I loved sport, but I never planned to be a sport administrator until I was given that opportunity then to formally get into sport administration.
Fifth point here is having passion for sports is absolutely awesome, but it's very important to have a sense of direction, because your passion will keep you in sports, but understanding where you want to go, what you want to achieve in sports is definitely something that will give you the direction, and definitely something that will ensure that even when it gets hard, even when you start falling out of love with the sport, but your sense of direction and the destination that you want to reach will be something that that will keep you going. And I think Shafika mentions it perfectly in her interview when she says, what does getting into the sports industry mean? What does that question mean to you? Because a lot of us will say, I want to get involved in the sports industry, I want to get into the industry, but define that. Let's get to defining it and saying, what does it mean for you? Because it's very important that we understand how things operate, even if we aren't going to specialize in them, so that you can get that sense of direction.
Does it mean to get into the industry? Does it mean you become a manager? Does it mean you get a full-time role immediately? Does it mean that you volunteer somewhere? Because I think that sometimes is missing. that drive. So it's fantastic that you've got a degree, it's fantastic that you've got a qualification. It doesn't necessarily make you the best person for the job yet. And I think sometimes my frustration around the youth is that sort of sense of, I need to have what I want right now. And it doesn't work like that. I mean, it took me years. A couple of months ago, I was sitting at Athens Stadium and thinking, geez, I actually started my career here servicing people like me, like the job I have now. And again, that full circle moment makes you realize all of those sacrifices. The fact that I left SAFA every evening and went to get another job, worked on weekends just to kind of make ends meet. It was absolutely worth the sacrifice. And I worry sometimes that our young people are not equipped or not understanding that that's what it takes.
Yeah, and so guys, that's pretty much it for me. If you are looking into getting into the industry and developing a professional career in the sports industry, that's the 5 points that I have for you that I've taken out of the 6 interviews that we've had. We've had an absolute pleasure of speaking to amazing people. Let me know in the comments down below what you've taken out of the 6 interviews that we've had. Let us know where you're listening to the interview from, and we'd like to interact with you a whole lot more. So do your thing, guys. Down below, subscribe first, click the notification, and then you like. The thumbs up, not thumbs down, thumbs up. You've been doing an awesome job. And then down there again, we'll leave your comments. Tell us what you've learned, what lessons you've learned, and let's share it, guys. Let's build this community. Let's help people follow their dreams and follow the passion.